evening. Right now, Metro Police are desperately searching for the person or people responsible for killing a man and a woman.
I got a male down in the middle of the street.
Breaking news now, a triple shooting leaves 2 dead.
Never expect for somebody to tell you your loved one was murdered.
This Labor Day will mark 42 years that have haunted the St. Cloud family.
30 years. 30 years this family has waited for answers.
A couple months go by, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you really start to struggle with the idea that the case might not get solved and that somebody might get away with murder.
It's very unfortunate that we have any cold cases at all, and certainly unfortunate that we have as many as we do. And that's why Ryan's work and the work of Project Cold Case is so important.
Hello, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Ryan Backman, founder of Project Cold Case. I'm joined today by Katie Jeffries, First Coast News.
Hi, I work on the series called Unsolved. We cover cold cases.
You have surely seen those series. They do a great job. We feature them here every time Katie comes in. We talk about a case. We re-show those stories. We're going to be having a little chat after this, hopefully, about another series.
Yeah, that should be coming up later on, and probably maybe November, end of October, early November.
Yeah, you do a lot of planning, and we get all this stuff set up early.
Yep.
That kind of goes into a long segment and a series. So we'll be talking about getting those started very soon, and hopefully we'll be sharing those in future Facebook Lives too, and of course on First Coast News. But thanks for joining us again this week.
I'm happy to be here, and we're profiling a case that we did back in 2017. I can't believe it was actually that long ago.
It wasn't the first wave, because I was going back and looking.
I think it might have been maybe the second or third.
Second wave, yeah. It was that first wave you did was literally like a week long.
Yeah, and they were kind of very basic, minute and a half type stories, and it's grown from there.
That was kind of the test for your station.
Yeah, to see how they do.
They gave you a little bit of a little rope to see what you could do with it, and then thankfully for all of us, they really liked it, and so they let you do a few more. And I think this was part of that next wave, and this case particularly is one that is really close to my heart, because we're going to talk about Barry Brooks Jr., BJ, today, is how he was known. And when my dad was killed and I was looking for people to lean on, there was a group in town called Compassionate Families. They reached out to me. I went to a support meeting. I met some people there. I started volunteering for them, and I met BJ's mom and dad, but particularly mom, in those times. And BJ had been killed 2 years prior to my dad's murder. So they had already kind of forged this path. They were on this path that I was on. And I really, really bonded with Margie, BJ's mom. We volunteered together. We did camps with kids that had been affected by homicide. We did family picnics. Her husband would come and man the grill, Barry Sr., and just have known them now for a really long time. I'm really, really close with them, and so I'll try not to get emotional during this one, but this is one of those families that has been there kind of from the beginning of my journey, and they're very special people. They come to all of our events, and I just care very much about them. And so, because it was 2017, the last time this thing saw the light of day, we wanted to get it back out there and make sure that that people know that this case is still unsolved as well.
And so far, I haven't heard much about in the way of updates about it since we've done this story. But it happened back in November of 2007.
Right. He
was 19 years old, and his parents were so sweet, trying to kind of describe what happened. He was protecting his girlfriend that he was with at the time, and a few things were stolen from him, and unfortunately he was shot and killed.
Yeah. Let's watch your story, because you did a great job, but then the family, this was one that they had some video, they had lots of photos.
Yeah.
So let's watch that, and then we'll talk some more about the case.
What's that? That's Uncle BJ?
They only know their uncle in pictures. Only hear about his kindness and talent from others.
They know Mama. They know their mom has 2 brothers. They see one brother, they see Uncle Kevin, but they never get to see Uncle BJ.
In the innocence of childhood, they don't fully understand why Uncle BJ isn't here. But the rest of the family knows the painful story. Margie Brooks remembers the last time she spoke to her son. It was a simple conversation about dinner.
What he wants to do with the food, and he said, I'll get it when I come back. And he never came back.
It was November of 2007. Barry Brooks Jr. was just 19 years old. He loved the arts, and especially dance, and was a swim coach at 2 elementary schools. The last day of his life had been spent doing homework, helping a cousin change a tire, taking family to visit his grandma, before picking up his girlfriend and going to visit a friend at the Mission Springs Apartments off Timuquana Road. That's when 2 people came up behind them.
I think it was a random attack. I think that they were out looking to rob somebody or up to no good, and that he was just a target of convenience at that time.
But after the 2 robbers grabbed BJ's cross necklace and money, they didn't leave.
They wanted to try to do something to the young lady, and so him and the one guy got to tussling, and the other guy pulled out a gun and shot him.
BJ was rushed to the hospital, but died.
You're numb, you just don't know. It's like a fog, like the clouds come over you.
The grief BJ's parents felt was overwhelming, almost disorienting. Their entire world shattered in that one night. Their youngest child, the boy who had once spent all night writing his mother a poem for her birthday, was gone. Now, nearly 10 years later, the case is technically cold. But Sergeant Dan Jansen with Jacksonville Sheriff's Office says that doesn't mean the pursuit of justice is over. They're looking at retesting some of the forensic evidence at the scene with newer technology.
We're giving it a second look, and we've got some stuff of interest that we're focused on. I can't say that it's promising at this point. It's kind of early, but we are looking into it.
And justice is all the Brooks family is asking for. BJ's older brother, a local teacher, often paints as his way of coping. Mary's sister talks about him to her children. He was the youngest, but also the tallest of the 3, gifted with talent and compassion for others.
They call him the big little brother because that's just, his demeanor. Now he's our little angel bear.
So I don't know how anybody could watch that and not, feel connected to this case and want to help that family. BJ obviously was a teacher. He was a dancer. He was, a friend. He was a brother. He
just
was
a good
son.
person. Very active in his family's life and trying to help other people, teaching, kids how to swim, teaching dance lessons.
Yeah.
So just a nice young man.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of those people that the more you hear about him, the more you wish you had known him, when he was alive and been able to experience that energy. Maybe he could have taught me how to dance. That would have been cool. But, sometimes there are those people that you hear about them and you think, gosh, I really wish I would have gotten a chance to be around them and meet them and see that. Yeah. And he's definitely one of those people,
And I love that, his mom even had the poem that he wrote.
Yeah.
And it was a really beautiful poem. It just goes to show you how heartfelt he was and just how sweet he was.
Yeah, he's like, you hear the stories of him, and he's like a Renaissance man. He could do it all. You know what I mean? He's a poet. He was a dancer. He was, a handyman. He could change a tire. You know what I mean?
I know, all the things he did in that last
in one
day.
day. Yeah, in one day he did all of this stuff. And you see that and you think like our community is
needs more young people like that.
Yeah, and we're worse off because he was taken from us. And that's, I think, one of the things we want to stress when we do these is, it's not just a family that misses out when somebody's taken too early. Our entire community is worse off because BJ is no longer in it, because Barry Brooks Jr. is gone. We don't know what he could have done in our community and what he could have done to make Jacksonville a better place. So we were all robbed of that, So I hope that some people will take that away when they see these stories and they don't have a personal connection to them, that they will understand that like we are all impacted by these, whether you realize it or not.
And his family's still impacted by it. I mean, it was almost, I guess, 12 years ago at this point, but his family still very much remembers, their last conversations, has all the pictures, has the videos, and you saw telling his nieces and nephews all about him. So they still very much are living with this, as
absolutely, absolutely, yeah. And as anybody watching the story saw, they were just walking through the apartment complex, he and his girlfriend.
Yeah, just on their way.
Yeah, and they're approached by two guys in hoodies, and they take
the cross
necklace, and then one of them says something to BJ's girlfriend. He intervenes and is shot.
Yep.
It just again, here he is defending somebody while being robbed, and it just kind of shows the character of Barry Jr. and what we are all missing now that he's gone.
And the people who did that to him, I mean, they took his cross necklace. They could have just left with that, or money or anything like that. But instead, they did decide to end his life, which shows the kind of people they are, and which is why they should be held accountable.
Absolutely. And I found an old article that said that two men matching the descriptions that BJ's girlfriend gave were picked up and questioned, but that there was no evidence that they were involved or to prove that they were involved, so they were never arrested, and the case is still unsolved. Like you said, 12 years in November, this family's been waiting. And I was going back through, I've known them for almost 9 years now, and known that family, and so actually for over 9 years now. And so they, I've seen them do stories with the media, occasionally. I remember the 5-year anniversary. I remember the 10-year anniversary, and here we are 12 years still hoping that somebody will come forward in that situation and give the Brooks family the answers they deserve and get those people off the streets.
And crime doesn't happen in a vacuum. After 12 years, I feel like there's a high likelihood, especially with two people involved, that someone has said something at some point.
Yeah.
To maybe someone outside of who was there.
That circle. Yeah, absolutely.
So come forward.
And, Crimestoppers, you know what I mean? We talk about that every week, but 866-845-TIPS. We had Wiley Hodges, the executive director, on a couple of weeks ago, and he was very clear that tip that leads to an arrest on a murder is a $3,000 payout. Because we always say up to $3,000 reward. Well, that's because they give rewards on, burglaries, thefts, batteries.
But murder's different. It's
but murder's
automatic.
different. Yeah, murder is going to get you a $3,000 reward. Turning in somebody that stole a bike, you don't get $3,000, but you can get a reward. So, and you remain completely anonymous. He explained that to everybody. So, there's no excuse if you were the person that someone that was involved talked to.
Clear your conscience and get $3,000.
Exactly. And I know a family that would be forever grateful for somebody coming forward and doing that and giving them those answers. So again, 866-845-TIPS. Crimestoppers, completely anonymous, and $3,000. And when we talked to Wiley, he told us the payout on that is basically like no more than 30 days. Like it went from the arrest. If they make an arrest, the sheriff's office lets Crimestoppers know that the tip led to an arrest. The board meets at their next board meeting, which happens monthly, and they assign the money,
which is automatic, and boom,
there you go. So you're not talking about months of waiting or years of waiting.
It's not on a conviction, which can be a long time. It's upon arrest.
Much longer, longer wait. So, if anybody has questions on that, I encourage them to reach out to me, Crimestoppers. But if you have a tip, call it and give it to them, because we can't have people walking around the streets shooting good guys.
Yeah, shooting
for no
someone
reason.
who, he gave them the cross necklace. He was just defending his girlfriend, which I feel like is a very reasonable action in that situation. And unfortunately, they decided one of the suspects pulled out a gun and shot him, which is awful.
Yeah. This, Margie and Barry, BJ's parents, like I said, I've grown to know them and become close with them over the years. And, from volunteering together a few years ago, we helped write a book about cold case stories called Grief Diaries, Project Cold Case. And it took 22 stories from around the country of unsolved murders, and Margie contributed to that book. She participated in that with us and wrote about it. I've had conversations with Barry Sr., and Margie kind of found comfort in volunteering and helping other families, and Barry Sr. would do those things too, but he would always say, like, it makes him so mad. He still has a lot of anger. He has over the years had a lot of anger, and he really, kind of struggles with that. And, if you could meet these individuals, and I know some people watching have, because they've volunteered with us before and gotten to know Margie, that this family is just a good family that didn't deserve this. Not that anybody does, but it has affected them for years. And Barry, will talk about it sometimes, that he just, if he sees somebody in a black hoodie, like, he gets upset. He starts wondering if that's the person that killed his son. And if you have not been impacted by violence,
the constant not knowing, is it that person behind me?
Is it that store? Yeah, like, literally think about that for a second. Like, every time you leave your house, if you see anybody that matches any kind of description you've been given on the person that killed your loved one, you're constantly wondering if that's the person that did it. And that's just
are they still in this neighborhood? Are they still in Jacksonville?
Are they going to target us because we're looking for them? You know what I mean? Like, there's fears out there, sometimes irrational fears, and sometimes founded fears, but it's, to have to live like that is not fair. And as a community, we hope that we can come together by sharing these stories and putting the information out there, and that somebody will come forward, and we make Jacksonville a safer place, and we give the family answers, and that's all important stuff.
When we were putting together that story, we chose to open it with his nieces and nephews, because when we were there, something about it struck me that they could recognize him in a picture. They knew that was their uncle, even though they'd never met him.
Never met him, right.
But they didn't understand why he wasn't there.
Right.
When they were just too young at that time to really explain that.
And that's, I have young kids, and they know who Grandpa Cliff is, but we haven't gotten into why Grandpa Cliff's not around.
Yeah.
You don't have that conversation with a
4 or 5 year old,
4-year-old, but they do know, and they recognize. We did the safety fair out at the Avenues a couple Saturdays ago here in Jacksonville, and we took out our banners that you see behind us, and we took one out, and my daughter was with me, and she doesn't come in the office much. She doesn't know these banners, and we're setting up our booth, our table, and we set up the banner, and all of a sudden she goes, there's Grandpa Cliff, on the banner. And, she's almost 5, so she doesn't get what that means, but she recognizes him and she knows him. And if she sees a picture of him, she'll say, his name. And so I know that, and you think that adds a layer of grief to families that,
they only know him through stories.
And don't think that doesn't hang over their head, that one day they have to have the story of why Uncle BJ is not around. And, you have to explain to a little child that bad things happen to good people, to people that we love, and that sometimes the bad guy doesn't get caught, you know, and those are hard conversations to have in your head with yourself, much less when the time comes and you have to have it with a young child that shouldn't have to worry themselves with that kind of thing.
And I think when it comes to being the good guy in a story, being the good guy can be the person turning somebody in.
Absolutely.
It can be the person calling Crimestoppers or stepping forward, and you can be the kind of the hero
You're the hero.
That story.
Yeah. I mean, you said it, Katie. All of these stories are looking for a hero.
Mm-hmm. The person that turns them in.
The person that turns them in is that hero, and even if it's anonymously or if you're willing to come forward and turn them in, like, you are the hero. You don't think that. every one of these families would consider you a hero if you gave them those answers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's you know, people don't think about it like that, but that's, you know, you're not a tipster, you're a hero.
Yeah, you gave them finally some sense of, and I don't know if closure's possible, but some sense of, now I know who it was.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the family doesn't have to, when they leave and
Wonder.
go to the grocery store, they don't have to wonder if the guy in the hoodie is the guy that killed their loved one, or the guy not in the hoodie now because it's summer, you know, but is that the guy that killed BJ or whoever? So, yeah, I mean, that's a really good way to look at it. I think if we could encourage people to be the hero, you know,
yeah, and you can be anonymous, and you don't have to worry. You've had Wiley on, like they have a system in place that there's really no way for them to track it back to you. No, even when you pick up the money, it's just by a number that you're given,
and they don't want to know who it is. They have established this protocol that works, and if you call up and start giving your name, you mess that up.
Yeah, it works because it's anonymous.
Yeah. If you want to give your name, just call the law enforcement agency, you know, outright. And, you know, if you don't care, and Wiley said there are many times that somebody will not collect the reward because they're not doing it for the money. Mm-hmm. They're doing it because they want to help a family and give them those answers. And, you know, so that says a lot too, that money is not collected sometimes, and it shows. But hey, if you need $3,000 and you have information on a murder, by all means, call it in and go collect that money.
Whether it be this one or any murder or any crime, really.
Yeah. You know, we do need to come together as a community and make Jacksonville a safer place. Mm-hmm. And this is how we can do it as just citizens of this community. I mean, this is how we do it.
Yeah.
You know, we put this information out there through First Coast News and through Project Cold Case. But, you know, outside of that, you know, as just a citizen in this community, you know, coming forward, see something, say something, all the you know, little catchphrases we all know. Crime doesn't pay, but we do. Crimestoppers, you know.
All their good slogans.
Yeah, all their good slogans.
And you don't have to know. I feel like people worry, like, well, maybe I'm overthinking it. And it's like, even if you only recognize pieces of a story,
right?
Because maybe they didn't know that their victim was, you know, Barry Brooks. They didn't know his name. So, but if it sounds familiar, I feel like if pieces of some of these stories sound familiar to things you've heard, call in.
Do you remember the apartment complex was over off Timuquana, but was it Mission?
Let
something?
me stand by here.
I looked at
Mission Springs Apartments.
Mission Springs Apartments. Yeah, over off Timuquana.
And I think it's still there. And
I don't know. Sometimes they change names, but the complexes are still there. Mm-hmm. But this was in 2007, November.
Yep. A cross necklace was stolen, and he was protecting his girlfriend at the time.
Yeah. And I think we had a picture. I don't know if it was one of the ones, and I don't know for sure if it was the cross necklace, and I don't even know if I gave that one to you. But there was a picture, and if we find it, we'll put it in the comments or whatever, because I assumed that cross was
probably pawned or sold.
Somebody walked around with it on their neck. But again, I'm not 100% sure that was the cross he was wearing. We could confirm that with the family and maybe JSO. But yeah, I mean, you know, going back to kind of how my connections to the family, like at Compassionate Families, we would have camps for kids that lost loved ones to homicides, solved and unsolved. And Camp Maddie, named after Maddie Clifton here locally, was a 3-day residential camp. We've talked about it a couple times kind of in passing on these Facebook Lives, but we would take 60 young campers out to Camp Immokalee in Keystone Heights, and we would have like group, you know, counseling sessions. We would zip line, canoe, kayak, you know, s'mores on a bonfire, you know, all the things that the kids do at camp. But some of the activities that we would do for therapy to help these kids, and Margie would always volunteer. She'd be with the younger, older girls depending on the year, and I'd be with the younger, older boys, you know, depending on the year. But sometimes they would take like little clay pots for planting and put them in a bag, and then like hit them with a hammer and break them, and then glue them back together, and kind of like symbolic of when you've been
Put yourself
hurt
back
by
together.
this. Yeah, you can still be a pot. You'll be cracked, and there may be a piece missing from you always, but you can be put back together. We would do. One of the more powerful things was we would have the children write their loved one a letter on rice paper, and no one else got to see the letter. They wrote it whatever they wanted to say, and then as sunset, we'd go out on the docks, and they would go out and have a moment on the dock, and then toss the rice paper into the water, and it would dissolve, and nobody would ever know but they got to have a conversation with their loved one, or say something powerful and important. And I know that those camps were something that both Margie and I really got a lot out of, and some of our bonding time was spent out there in the woods in Camp Immokalee, but things like that, volunteering with kids. We also did youth hope camps, which Camp Maddie was like once a year. A couple times we did it twice a year, but we'd have these youth hope camps that were quarterly, and they would be more just at a local YMCA, and we'd take we'd go swimming, or we'd play basketball, or we'd have games and stuff like that, and do some group therapy once a quarter. And that was really therapeutic for me, and I think for Margie too. And so that was kind of how we got to know each other so well, and that's why BJ is always kind of at the front of my head when I think about when I started Project Cold Case. I reached out to the families that I knew from Compassionate Families that had unsolved cases, and was like, hey, this is what I'm going to be doing. This is what I'm going to be starting. If you want us to put your loved one on our website, we will. And
so
then,
they were there from basically the beginning.
So they were there from basically the beginning. And we did a billboard campaign a couple years ago. We put billboards up around the city, and you can see there, was BJ at the end. He was one of those faces that you can't. Billboards are expensive, digital billboards, and if you do just one case, then you've got eyes on just one person, and we were trying to figure out a way that would
have more on there
and drive traffic back to our site, so that maybe if they didn't have information on one specific person, they would still come back and look, and see what the case that maybe they did have information on. So BJ is always in the forefront of my mind when I talk about my experiences and the families I've gotten to know. Sometimes but for the worst day of my life, the worst day of Margie and Barry Sr.'s life, like, we wouldn't know each other. We live on different sides of town. We have different career paths. We may not have ever crossed paths, but for the worst days of our lives. And now I think, we consider each other's, families.
Yeah.
And so when we did, Project Cold Case did a kind of a promotional video a couple of years ago to educate people on what we do here in the office. And we wanted to bring in some law enforcement. We wanted to bring in some survivors. So, that intro that we do at the beginning of Facebook Lives, take some clips from that. It includes like Melissa Nelson talking. But in the full video, which is available on our website, Margie is one of the survivors that talks about, losing BJ and how that case is still unsolved. Yeah. And, I dream of the day that I can sit in court with them, and get answers and justice. So,
and she can, just speaking to us and being still so involved, I don't think she's given up hope that there's still a chance.
No, they're very engaged in the community. They have a lot of things that they're involved in, but I promise you, BJ's memory is never far from their minds, and they have not given up hope. I mean, you can imagine 12 years later, it's discouraging, and every year that goes by is a little harder, and that, the hope does start to fade, and that glimmer gets smaller and smaller. But that's why I think this is important, because we don't know how many people read the Times-Union article at the 5-year anniversary. We don't know how many people saw the First Coast News story. We were talking about it before, like people watch the news, they watch their news channel, but we don't get to control how many of them are sitting there when BJ's story is
when that one aired at that time.
I wish we could make sure that everybody in the city was sitting down watching at that moment, but we don't have control over that. So, so what do? Well, we're going to share it again on Facebook Live, and we're going to put it back out there and see if at some point we catch that person that does have information, and that's kind of our commitment to these families, is to keep sharing these stories somehow, some way, every time we come up with, a new idea, like let's get it back out there in that format.
A new way to get it in front of eyes.
Yeah, and we'll just keep doing that until somebody comes forward, so the message out there to those that have information is we're not going to stop asking for it.
No, it's not going away, so if you know something, you might as well call in.
Yeah, and you were there when you did this interview with the family. You had the nieces and nephews were there. We saw them, running around, jumping around. We've had them out at some of our events, with the kids, and the innocence of a child that, doesn't get to meet their uncle but knows all about them.
Can recognize him.
And, but to know that he was taken violently, and that those kids shouldn't have to learn that information about their uncle. No. No children should have to hear that story. So hopefully somebody will come forward and we'll have a resolution to this case where somebody is held accountable and justice happens. And that's kind of what we want to do.
Yeah, that Crimestoppers number is 1-866-845-TIPS. I know it by heart. So call it in.
I told Wiley, I said, I don't know how you did it, but getting every single reporter for every single media outlet, saying it, like memorizing your phone number and saying it after every single crime story that airs, no matter what it is. I'm like, that was quite the feat.
You got it. So I'm like, there are phone numbers that I don't even know. Gosh, some of my close friends' phone numbers off the top like that.
Exactly. It took me years to memorize my wife's cell phone number because everything's programmed in, so you didn't have to think about it. But now every time I go to Walgreens and I have to type in our little code to get the points or whatever.
You're like, now I know it.
Yeah. So, Clint, do we have some pictures? Did we share those already? No. Let's look. I mean, I don't know what else you can say about these pictures and these families that we haven't said before. It's all still true. There's Margie and BJ, and they.
He looks so much like his dad in that photo.
Yeah. His dad is one of the most intimidating individuals you've ever seen.
So sweet.
And the nicest human being, the biggest, teddy bear. He won't be happy about me saying that. I think there he is. There's Barry Senior, and I think
they were both just so kind to sit down and really. It's hard to sit down and open up to a news reporter you've never met before about the worst day of your life, and so they were so nice, sharing their story with us.
They are and every year at our event, I get. Barry to smile for the camera.
You get one smile.
I get one smile, and I get it at those events, and it means the world to me that he trusts me and that he, and I can share that story, But if you just see him walking around, that is a man you do not feel like you want to mess with and cross. But he is as sweet as Margie is. He just doesn't want you to know that. So, and there was a picture. That's the book. We're all holding the book, Grief Diaries, Project Cold Case. Those were some of the contributors. Like I said, it was 22 stories from around the country, but we had a number of stories that were local, including outside of Jacksonville and St. Augustine, Haley Smith, that was actually solved. It was a hit and run.
In St. Johns County.
In St. Johns County. Patty, our old victim advocate, is in that picture, and her daughter was murdered in Virginia. And Tammy is in that picture, whose dad was murdered in South Carolina. And Christina in the back in the red shirt, her brother was murdered up in New England area, and that anniversary just came and passed this last week again. But she drove up from Lakeland to be a part of that event, and is one of our contributors to that book. And there's Margie and Sue, who was watching a little while ago and who was commenting. Sue Washburn, who did a lot of volunteering with us at those camps and every year, and she bonded with Margie as well. That was at our event earlier this year, the Year of Hope event, and you can't really make it out, but just above Margie's head is the image of BJ.
His picture. I see it right there.
It's like right at the top, or straight up above her head. Again, those pictures were kind of in order as when we started. So, in those top few rows, those were the families.
Like, there's your dad.
Yeah, my dad's the first one, and Patty's daughter is the second one. And it's like, those were the families that we had contact with, when we started, before this was really an organization and people knew what we were going to do. It was like, I got to have pictures to put on here. Do you? Can
Someone's got to be kind of the
them?
first.
Yeah. So those first few rows are the families that we've known for since before Project Cold Case existed, and Margie's obviously and Barry are one of those families. So I think that's about it. We don't have anything else, any other images to share, Clint. Yeah. Katie, thanks for coming out again and making sure we get these stories out.
Always happy to do it.
We will keep everybody in the loop on what the next series is going to be and when those are going to air, so that your station has been great.
Thank you.
They have bought into the importance of raising awareness for these cases. But I'm always nervous that one day they're going to be like, we're
going to ride the wave while
they'll let me do it. Yeah, we're going to ride the wave. But the only way that happens is we got to have eyes on TV and people watching it, And so when you see that a local station in your area, in our area, wherever is sharing cold case stories, watch them, share them on social media, engage with them, make sure that everybody recognizes the importance of them. And then that wave is just going to keep going.
Yeah, because you want it to grow more and more. As we do it here, we've seen other stations start doing it within our group, which is called Tegna. We've seen other affiliates start their own kind of unsolved. Some call it unsolved. Some have taken the name, but they've been doing cold cases out of their area, so it's great to see it kind of grow.
Yeah, it is really cool to see it. Like, nobody's come right out and said, hey, we saw what they're doing down there, so we're going to do it. But that these are spreading. We know that people are engaged, are sharing them on social media, that we have a network of media personalities, journalists that follow our page, that share, like, and comment, and that go back to their stations and say, hey, look what they're doing.
We could do something similar.
We could do something. And we encourage our families, we are in Jacksonville, so the stories we share are in this Northeast Florida area on First Coast News and the other stations in town. But I encourage those families to reach out to media in their area.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, and say, and share these. Send them a link to an unsolved segment and say, look, this organization that we work with that's based out of Jacksonville, they have these partnerships with media. Would you be willing to do this and share a story, somewhere else?
Or if you have an anniversary coming up of, maybe your loved one, a 10-year anniversary, a 20-year anniversary, don't hesitate to reach out to a media organization where you live and say, hey, it was 10 years ago. Would you be willing to maybe do another story about this? And I mean, if you reach out to reporters individually, especially, you have a higher likelihood, I think, of them doing it.
Your availability now with social media, every reporter has Twitter, every reporter has a professional Facebook page, that is easy to make contact. And y'all are always looking for stories.
Yeah, and everybody, there's not someone else running those pages. Everyone's running them themselves. So if you send a message, it's that person, that reporter that's going to see it.
And I know we've had, people in the past will say, well, I reached out to the media and I didn't get anything. Like, you guys are swamped and busy, and you're in a constant cycle of, this is the story I've got to do for this afternoon. Yeah. This is the story, and then tomorrow morning is a new story. And don't take that stuff personally. Reach
They
out
may
again,
not have just not seen it.
right?
Yeah.
Or reach out to, if you send it to the meteorologist, it may get lost in the shuffle,
or the general news,
or the
like
general
mailbox.
news. Yeah. So reach out to a specific reporter, one that you've seen them do stories on crime.
Yeah.
And that has an interest in that kind of thing. And I have yet to see like
I think you'll get a
reporter.
response.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, you can't put it out there every single day. But
Right, but if you have a significant something coming up, I bet they could maybe and reach out like maybe a week or two in advance.
Yeah,
you
give
could
them a heads
probably
up.
get on their schedule to maybe do an update or a story.
Yeah, and so we definitely encourage that because it's a powerful tool. We're starting to see more and more. The National Institute for Justice just did a best practices for creating and sustaining a cold case unit in the United States, and they have a media section on there. And as you know, sometimes there can be some friction between law enforcement and media everywhere. And without question, when it comes to cold cases, law enforcement that is in the know, families and reporters will all come together for these stories.
It's one of those spots where it's always been actually a pretty good area where the groups can all kind of work together.
Yeah, everybody is fighting for that same cause, and it has been valuable. We've seen it on a number of occasions where it's been valuable to have the media's help and support on that. So, reach out. It's typically not the media that's not willing to do a story on a cold case.
They just maybe didn't see it. They didn't know. We have unfortunately, so many cases. It's hard for us to keep track of, especially cases that are, 10 or 20 years old. You lose track of anniversaries.
Absolutely. And, but don't be embarrassed to reach out to a reporter.
No,
I mean,
don't
you
hesitate.
guys are.
I get messages all the time.
Yeah, I mean,
for all kinds of things.
I remember back before I was ever involved in this kind of stuff. Like there was a bit of an intimidation factor with the the person that was on the news all the time. And we do kind of create this. They're local celebrities. You're a local celebrity. And but I know a lot of media people now, and some of the most caring individuals out there. They're not.
We'd love to tell your story.
Good. Yeah, so please reach out, and you probably have a full inbox when you get back for the local people that we've already tipped them off. They were going to be looking at some new stories.
Send me all of the messages. No, that's all right. I like to help, and it's always nice when a family's on board because, as you've seen, we like to show videos and pictures and really talk about the person. And without the family, it's hard to get that aspect of it too.
It's an important part of the story, the impact that the loss has had. But I love seeing the video of BJ dancing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like it just, that is really cool to be able to share.
Shows
that.
your personality.
Yeah. And so, the little lead time on those stories and gather up all your, your pictures and videos and that'll help. And, you can always reach out to us if you have any questions on that or if you're scared to call. I have your cell phone number. I'll text Katie.
They'll send me that.
So, all right. Well, thanks for joining us again, Katie. We'll look forward to your next segments.
We'll keep you
Unsolved.
updated.
Perfect. Margie, Barry, we love you guys. We're thinking about you. We hope that this is the time that the right person sees this and comes forward. Thank you, everybody, for watching and sharing these stories and understanding how important they are to the family and to the community. We will check back with you next time.